Well, a while back I got a request to make some corn, both ears of corn straight from the garden or from the store or the market, and corn on the cob for the dolls to eat. So this week we're tackling the ears of corn. So stay tuned and see how fun and easy this project is. Alright, so we're going to make ears of corn like you saw in the intro, and we are making everything from corn cobs that you might, just like you've brought home from the grocery store, the farmer's market, or maybe straight out of the garden. Maybe the dolls have a garden that they're picking them from. So we're going to make some that are still in their husks that look much like this. So I've got two examples. One of these I picked up today at the grocery store, one I picked up a couple of days ago. And we need to look at what it looks like. So they range, the shorter one is about 10 inches, the other one's about 12. So that gives us a size. They're a couple of inches in diameter. They have a skinny piece that comes out the end, and then you can feel the corn cob inside of here. And it comes to a little bit of a rounded point at this end. They're covered in corn husk, and they've got these lovely stringy things on the end, the silk. And there's lots of pieces of corn husks. So I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks, how to replicate it. So that's the process we are going to do now. We're going to start, I'm going to move these over to the kitchen counter. And I'm going to start by making a two-step core that we're going to build our corn husks over. To do that, we're going to use polymer clay. We're going to make a polymer clay, kind of a corn cob to go inside of this. It won't have any details. It'll just be a filler for the husk. So let me put this over on the counter. Let me go get some clay and let's get started. All right, for this internal part that we're not going to see much of, I'm using Original Sculpting. It's a less expensive per ounce clay. It's soft and easy to work with, and I like to use it I use it a lot with this scale. I didn't use it nearly as much when I was just doing the dollhouse size, but for this scale I like it a lot. Now I am trying to roll this down to about 1/4 inch. I want to make 1/4 inch snakes. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing on this has to be perfect. I just want to get about. I'm going to measure the first couple, and then after that, I'm just going to go use those for sizing. So now I've got about 1/4 inch snake. Get my ruler the right direction, and I'm going to cut a 3-inch chunk of it. Now this looks really skinny, and this is only what we're building on. This is the first step. It's not obviously the completed piece. Now I am going to round this end so it's kind of semi-pointed. This is going to sit off to the side. I'm going to make one of these for every ear of corn that I want to have inside a husk. When we get ready to use the ones that have been pulled out of the husk and ready to eat, we'll be making a variation of this, a shorter piece. But for these, this is what we're going to build on. So I'm going to make several of these, just like I just did. In fact, I'll do one more on camera, just in case you missed any of those steps. Roll this down to about 1/4 inch in diameter. If you've got one of these drill gauges, that's perfect. It doesn't have to be exact. It can be a little thinner, a little fatter. There were different size ears of corn in the grocery store, in the bin. If you go to a farmer's market, it's even more difference. Cut it at 3.5 inches. That will make kind of a middle of the road ear of corn. You can make some a little shorter, some a little longer, and then just kind of make this. This will give us some shape to build from. All right, I'm going to make more. Then I'm going to move them to my paper plate, because remember, I almost always bake on a paper plate. One of these unglazed white ones. You know, the kind that you don't want to get stuck with at the picnic because you'll have your food in your lap. They're perfect for baking clay on because there's no finish on them. They're just plain paper. I'm going to bake these at the temperature recommended for my clay, actually slightly lower because my oven has a bad habit of wandering in temperature and going up. So I'd rather bake lower than higher. I'm going to bake these for probably about 10 minutes. I want to make sure that these are laying on the plate straight and that they get baked all the way through so that I can go on to the next step and not break them or bend them. So when these are baked and cooled, because they'll have to be room temperature again, then I'll come back and we can go on to the next step. Right, I got my corncob bases here off to the side. They're baked, they're cooled to room temperature, and I've got a wad of the same Sculpey Original clay. We're going to need quite a big piece. We're not going to use much, but we've got to have big enough to get cut the right size. So I'm going to roll it out. I have a single layer craft stick on each side. That way when I get this down to the thickness of the craft stick, I'll know that it's a nice level thin sheet. Now if you have a pasta machine that you use for clay, that would work really well. I don't have mine set up currently. Mine's in its box since I moved, and I don't really have a good place to set it up here. It's on my list of things I need to do. Always use your blade to kind of slide under there and release your clay from your work tile, especially if you haven't put cornstarch down first. I need longer craft sticks here. My longer ones I think are a different thickness. All right. Once again, I'm going to release it. And I'm just running my blade pretty flat under there. I'm not cutting anything. I'm just kind of working my way under the clay to pull it off. I don't want to leave a skin of clay on my tile. I just want to release the clay. It feels a little thicker right there, so back towards that. I should have measured that. Why did I not measure that? Oh, I'm fine. Okay. I'm going to move from that side because this corner feels thick. I don't want to use that really thick spot. I'm going to cut to cut a piece about 2 inches tall. I am going to cut a straight edge, and then I'm going to cut into 1-inch pieces. I'll need 4 pieces that are about 2 inches by 1 inch and about as thick as my craft sticks. Off camera, I'll roll out another piece. All right. 2 off to the side so they're not in my way. Take one of these. Yeah, it's going to be a good fit. Now I've got liquid polymer clay here. This happens to be liquid Sculpey. You could use Bacon Bond. You could use any liquid clay for this. This acts as a glue when we're attaching raw clay to cooked clay, and we're going to use it in several steps here. Now put this on so that it's about like that, and then roll it. If yours are a little bit different size, you might want to try rolling it before you put the clay on, the liquid clay on it, but I've already made a couple, so I know that my thickness and my sizing is about right. Kind of work it so it blends in with the shape that we already created. Just kind of round this end off just a little bit. Now this is never going to be seen, so you don't have to worry about it being super smooth. You just want it making a good attachment to the blank. Let's do that one more time on camera, and then I will turn the camera off and finish. Now, like I was saying, if I hadn't already done a couple, I would be doing this to make sure that it was going to be the right size. But I knew it was the right size because I've already done one. It looks like it's almost time for me to buy a new bottle of liquid clay. There we go. It doesn't have to be perfectly centered. We're just getting it on there so that we can kind of work it out. And the blending isn't as important now as it will be on the ones where this is going to show. By doing the ears of corn that are going to be in the husks, it's kind of like practicing for the ones we're going to do later. Because our ears of corn are going to take some of the same steps, similar anyway. And that way we've kind of practiced them a little bit. All right, I am going to turn the camera off. I'm going to cover these last two. I already had one done, so then I'll bake these. These will need to be baked at the suggested temperature for, I'm going to give them 15 minutes just to make sure that the liquid clay is cured. Then while they are baking and cooling, we can start working on getting our paper prepped to make our husks for our corn. So I'll be right back. All right, so our cobs of corn are going to be covered in corn husk. And I've been thinking about what could I use that would lay correctly. And I decided my best option was tissue paper. This is that tissue paper you buy to wrap gifts in. I've cut a bunch of strips that are 4.5 inches tall. I cut them 4.5 inches tall because that's longer than I'll need. It's the size of my ruler. So what I did was I folded one sheet down like this and cut across at 4.5 inches. Cut two of those and then I cut them to fit my tile. I'm only going to do one on camera for you, and then I'll do the rest off. And I grabbed some craft paints, and I think this is probably what I'm going to use as my base color. This is Ceramicoat's Lemon Sorbet. And I just laid that all on top of my thing I was going to reach for. I've got a little container. I'm going to squirt some of this paint out. We'll do some shading and highlighting with other colors later once this is on the corn cobs. But I wanted to get a base color. And I'm going to just paint this going this direction only. It's not going to have quite the texture, but it will lay like the real thing. And we'll try and add some texture using some color once it's wrapped on. So I'm going to, and this will be fragile, so be very careful. Be very fragile while it's wet. This is wax paper on my tray. You could use wax paper or a piece of parchment, something that this will not stick to. So I'm going to paint as many of these as I can fit on my tray, and I'll probably, once they're dry, I'll probably paint a few more. Not sure how many we are going to need, because this is the first time I've covered any of these. So I've got it thought out, but I haven't actually done it yet. So I'm going to paint some of these and let the paint dry completely. And when I feel I have enough, I'll probably try to paint all 4 of the strips I have here. Get these all painted and dried, and I'll come back and we can start putting our corn together. All right, we are going to work on what will become the silk on our whole ears of corn. And what I have here are some little snips off of this yarn. This is from Dollar Tree. It's kind of a pale yellow, but it's got, I don't know what color to call this, and they don't put a color on it, but you can see what the color is. It doesn't have to be the exact same color. And I've cut some pieces that are 1 inch, 1.5 inches long. I've got wax paper down to protect my work surface here, and I've got them laid out on a piece of washi tape that is sticky side up. And I've got a toothpick, and what I'm going to do is frizz these out. Not all the way, just the tops. Only the tops are going to show. Just kind of comb it out. If you've got a pin, that would work. A dental's pick, a weeding tool from your Cricut, any pointy object will work for this. And it's kind of cheap yarn, obviously, since it's from Dollar Tree. It's not the best quality, so it does fray out quite well. And this has just the littlest bit of a sheen to it, I guess you would say. It's almost shiny. I think it's probably, again, my guess is because it's cheap. I'm just kind of going along here. And I am going to show you two ways to put the brown on, because you remember what the top of the corn looks like. The silk sticks out. You can see the kind of yellow color at the base of it where it's fresh, and then as it dries, the very ends are this kind of brownish color. So, two things I've got. Number one, I have an alcohol marker. Now this happens to be my Spectrum Noir marker. Any brown alcohol marker. I'm not sure if people like Sharpie or Bic Market make a brown marker. I don't remember, and I don't have one if they do. I like this because it will dry really quickly, and it won't bleed, and it won't be affected by any of our glues or anything. So that's one way to do this. I'll go ahead and do this top. I'll do enough. When I'm cutting, I'm allowing about 3 of these per ear of corn. There. If you do get the alcohol marker on anything, simply spray the object with isopropyl alcohol, and it will wipe right up. Now, for those of you that don't have alcohol markers and don't want to go get any, I'm going to do one batch with paint. This is just an acrylic paint. It's not a fancy one. In fact, this, I don't know where this came from. I have no idea. I've had it forever. But I've got 3 of them headed down this direction. I've found that I am very shy of brown paint. So I need to get to a craft store and get more browns. But okay, now those will need to dry. The rubbing alcohol, or the alcohol marker ones, are probably dry already. The others will need a few minutes. So while we're waiting, let me grab another brush. I'm going to go wash brushes here in a few minutes. Now I am going to try not to get brown paint all over these. In doing my first one, because I like to do one as I'm going, be a step or two ahead in my figuring out how this is going to work, I did realize it was a little harder to cover the very tip of this. So to aid in covering that, there's your stem end. This is the end that we made the little point on the original snake. And I'm just going to paint a little of that green paint. This is the same paint I used to paint the tissue paper husks. And this way, this will just blend in. If it does show, it will blend in. And nobody will know it's there unless they peel the paper off. And these are just meant to be displayed the way they are. They're not meant to be obviously peeled later. So maybe 1 or 2 of these in your collection, depending on the story you're telling with your dolls. So I am going to let those things dry, and while they dry, I'm going to go clean these brushes. When I get the brushes cleaned, I'll be back, but then this will be dry and we can go to our next step. All right, now we're going to add some silk to each of these 4 ears of corn. So what I've just got super glue, and I hate super glue because I always manage to glue my fingers. So I'm going to attempt to not do that today. Where did that just go? Oh, there it is. Okay. Lay this down. Probably less I have to glue my fingers if I lay it down. This just needs to be kind of tacked in place because our next step we will be gluing our paper that we painted over the top of it. So this is just to kind of tack it down so that we can make it stay put. So I'm going to turn the camera off because I have a feeling this is kind of painful to watch me deal with super glue. I will get silk bits glued onto each of my ears of corn. Hopefully not glue my finger permanently to anything. And when that is done, I'll come back and I'll show you how to do the next step. All right, so all the glue is dry on here, and that's all put together and ready to go. I have just some matte Mod Podge in a container. I've got it in the container. If you guys watch my channel, you know I almost always put my Mod Podge out on something else to use it because I don't want to take a chance on contaminating an entire bottle of Mod Podge if I would pick up fuzz off of that yarn or paint or who knows. And I've got an older brush that I don't really care about, just in case I don't get this all out or I pick up some weird thing. So I've cut myself, I don't know, 4 or 5 strips of that paper. And you'll notice we've got 2 colors because we painted on one side and the other side is a slightly different color. So that gives us some variety. And we're not going to worry about cutting these today to this group of strips down to size. We're just making some strips. I'm putting the Mod Podge on about that far up. I don't need it all the way up because I don't want it gluing to this part. I want that part kind of loose. And I've got wax paper down to protect my surface. It's easier to clean up and it gives me a good surface to work on and nothing will stick to it. And I'm just putting that on there. And I want a little more. I want it to go up a little further. And this is just our first layer. We're going to do a couple of layers depending on how, I might do 2, I might do more depending on how it looks. And each ear of corn will possibly be a little different on how many layers we put on. Got another one. And I'm lining up at the bottom of our cob, of our base. I want just the end of that to show at the bottom. If it wrinkles too much, pull it back, but a little bit of wrinkling is good, especially if the wrinkles go the right way. Okay. Roll it between my fingers to kind of tighten everything up. Let's get a couple more strips on there. And then this Mod Podge will need to dry. The only thing I'm really lining up is I'm lining up with the bottom there, with that flat edge. So I've got a piece of yarn that wants to bend that way, so tuck it in. I'm actually refilming this section of the video because when I went to edit, I was completely off camera on the one I filmed the other day. So I'm filming, I had to remake stuff and I'm trying to film this on editing day. On there. And I think I'm going to do one more. Since I cut it, I might as well use it. So I'm going to let this Mod Podge dry, and when this is dry, we'll be back and we'll go on to our next step, which I have a feeling I'll be refilming also because I messed up the other day when I filmed. All right, I'll be back when that dries. All right, I have one of these strips of our paper that we painted with the lime sorbet, and I want it to stand out a little bit against the rest of the corn, the rest of the husks on the corn. So I decided to add just a little bit of a slightly darker green. This happens to be Spring Green by Apple Barrel. The specific colors aren't important. Just try to keep just very little variation on this one. And for this, I'm going to dry brush going, maybe not blot off quite that much, just not all over. This one got a little wrinkled when it was wet with the other paint, and that's okay. Try to keep going that same direction and try, like there I got it way too heavy, but that's okay because I can hide that a little bit. So I'm going to continue to dry brush, which I'll probably do a better job of off camera than on, quite frankly, and so will you. I'll get this side and then I'll do the reverse side. That way I can turn these, I can use either side. I'll give this a few minutes to dry and then I'll be back and we can trim what we've already got on the ears of corn and add another layer. So I'll be right back. All right, the glue is dry on our first layer here. So let's go ahead and do some trimming and then we can add strips that we just painted that are now dry. So these need to be trimmed into some nice points. Try not to trim any of the other pieces. Remember, the points would be a little bit rounded. That one got a little more squared off than I wanted, but that's okay. So I am going to go ahead and get the rest of these all trimmed up. And then once I get those trimmed up, I will set up to glue on some more corn husks. So I'll be right back. All right, from this strip of paper I cut, that we put the extra green on, I cut a whole bunch of strips of various widths, around a 1/2 inch each. And then I've got my scissors and I'm just stacking a handful of them, 3, 4, 2, whatever I grabbed each time, and just kind of made points on the ends. That way, that part is already done. All right, let's grab one of these and I'm going to hold it up against here and trim off about that much. That way it's not quite so long. And I've already got the point cut. So pick a side that you like best to face out. Put some Mod Podge on the lower part of it, keeping that tip free of Mod Podge. And this way you'll have pieces that are not glued all the way down. And we'll probably do 2 or 3 per ear. I don't think I'd go more than 3 because you don't need more than 3. Guesstimate on this one. I don't like how wide that got, so do that. This one has kind of a funky point, so let's adjust that point. Looks like this one was way narrower than the ones I cut it with. So there we go. Put some glue on the bottom. A little higher than that. There we go. And there we go. Now let's put one more on this one. And then we're going to go on to I will turn the camera off and I will finish these up off camera. I'm going to make this one a little longer because I'm going to put it towards the back. But you can make these look however you want. All right, so I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to get the rest of these leaves on, however many I decide to put on each one. And when that's done, and the Mod Podge is dried, I'll come back and we can move to the next step. Now we're going to add some shading to these so that they look a little more real. It's up to you how much of this you do, but I've got kind of a rough brush here. I've also got some Q-tips if I decide to use those. But what I've got is a variety of paints. I have a bright green, and I'm just going to put one drop. And I've got a, what is this one? This one is a forest green. And I've got a vanilla cream, which is kind of a off-white. That hopefully I have a drop left. Come on. Oh, that's got a big gunky spot. Okay. And then I have water and a little eyedropper pipette type thing. I'm going to add some water to those. Excuse me, my voice decided to leave. And I'm going to use a couple of toothpicks just to kind of mix that together. What I want is I just want to barely tint this water because I want to add a wash. And I need a paper towel. And then just kind of go through. You've got your ears of corn here. Let's take some of this bright green, kind of blot off some of it. And that got a little too much, so. And you can add as much or as little of this as you want. More water in that one. That had a bigger drop of paint to it than that's better, I think. Use a Q-tip, cotton swab to kind of wipe that. I just want to get some more colors in so it's not all one color. And you can do as much or as little of this as you want, just like the whole rest of the project. It's up to you what you do. I probably should have brought some clean water to rinse my brush in, and a little bit of the off-white too. Just because sometimes there's some lighter colors in here. And because these are very wet, they should kind of bleed together a little bit and create more colors. So I am going to, I may even do the Q-tip a little bit to bring some color up. I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to continue with this until I have these all coated the way I want them. And once this paint dries, I'll come back and we'll see how these look. So I'll see you then. All right, that looks like the dolls have been out to the garden and got their corn. I love how these came out. They didn't come out exactly like I envisioned them, but pretty darn close. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Be sure and hop over to the blog post for photos. And next week, we'll be making corn on the cob for the dolls to eat. If you enjoyed the video, be sure and hit the like button. Leave me a comment. What kinds of things would you like to learn to make for your dolls? Thank you very much for watching today, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.